Testing, testing.
Hi, Cheryl.
Okay.
All right.
What is it?
Is this number 7? Yes. Yeah. Okay. So, we didn't have a chance to. Charlotte, I gave you a copy.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
This just came in the letter.
Okay.
See, do you have communications from public? Border Control passed the
Are we ready to go?
legislation, so we'll have to do something before the end of the month. I agree with so.
Okay. This is the new year-long.
That's for 19 to 20.
Whole city.
Yep.
How much are you?
It's a card to sign.
How are you, sir?
I call the Norton City Council regular council meeting to order for Monday, April 8th, 2019. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silent reflection. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Mr. Gaynor?
Here.
Mr. McClone?
Here.
Mr. Carrot?
Mr. Carrot is excused.
Mr. Towsley?
Here.
Ms. Whipke?
Here.
Mr. Pelot?
Here.
Mr. Kernan?
Here. I don't believe there's any communications from the public tonight. So under Committee of the Whole, reports from standing committees. Letter A will acknowledge the receipt of the March 2019 budget reports. Letter B, amending appropriations. Ms. Whipke?
Thank you, Mr. President. This would be, if we get it put on the agenda and move forward with it, this would be known as Ordinance 42, 2019. Before we actually get on with making the motions, I'd like to kind of go over this briefly. This particular legislation actually is attached to Ordinance 130, 2018, that we had passed last December 10th. It was designed to streamline appropriations and transfers, and I don't know about the rest of you, but I found it confusing myself. So I spent a lot of time on this and talking to Mr. Messner on it. Last year when we made the budget up for 2019, we actually only put $900,000 showing in this fund, 9,059,000. Known as the miscellaneous transfer fund, and that is shown in your Exhibit A along with this ordinance. However, 130 actually anticipated changing that amount up to $1,875,000. And again, this was in order to help streamline appropriations and transfers. So with this, if we come to something we've already budgeted for it, it would allow Mr. Messner to go ahead and transfer the money into the funds that was involved with 130, which would have been 102, 170, 200, and 771. So now this proposed 42, 2019 is actually increasing that budget up to the $1,400,000, or raising it $500,000. That's going into the miscellaneous transfer fund. This was going to leave us a balance of $475,000, yet that we can still move later if it's needed. This basically funds 506 and 1113 is what 42 is addressing. And we need to get those funds in there right now. They are cash negative. One of them for the new Park Drive construction, that's 506 for $75,000, and then Fund 113, which is for our DWI enforcement for $16,000, for a total of $91,000. It'll be coming out of this $500,000 right away, with the rest of it to be able to go to the funds as needed. So that's basically what this is for. We'll be ahead then, and this money will be able to be used, transferred, but before it gets spent, it'll still come back to us.
Right.
And Mr. Messner can clarify 130 more if there's something else that needs to be said.
Madam Chairman, I think you did a good job. The only thing that I would point out, and I did put copies of 130 in all your mailboxes so you could refer back. If you look at Section 2, it says, Council hereby directs Director of Finance to promptly provide a report to Council after completion of each transfer. Well, I'm advising Council herewith that as of March 26th, I did transfer $354,000 out of that transfer fund to Fund 170, which is roads, to bring that up to meet the budget, the 1.1 million budget that, since we approved the road project.
Okay.
I also moved $300,000 into the service department, which is Fund 102. That allowed me to move $600,000, so I've only moved half of it at this point. So I'm advising Council, I probably will be back to you before sometime later this year for additional increase in the transfer line as other things come up, because they do come up. You all know we do 5 or 6 transfers throughout the year. So it was a little bit confusing when Charlotte and I talked through it today, trying to keep the two straight. But I think she did a good job. I think she's got her head twisted around it, and I told her if we got into the brush tonight, I would certainly help her out. But there's still things to be left. I don't, at this point, I don't anticipate the need to transfer anything for Fund 200. I think we're appropriately cashed for that account. I will, though, be transferring the $300,000 out of 771 probably closer to June, when we get our semi-annual interest payment due on our debt. That usually the total payment for the year with principal and interest is about 500 and some thousand, so I will be transferring that 300,000. And at that point, I don't anticipate, unless something else comes up on road, needing to transfer any more at this time for the road project, but I will be transferring more for service. As you're aware, only gas and motor vehicle license supplement the service department, and their budget is about $1 million more than what that brings in. So we always have to help them out of the general fund.
Are you done? Okay. We've also got on here about the transferring the money for the funds 108 and 109 for the levies. Those were the levies that actually ceased to be used back in 2012 before we had the newest levies come on. We've been trying to get those funds out of there to use them up any way we can. So we're moving them to another line item in the hopes that we can actually finish it off for this year, which it'll still be going towards the fire, but that way we can get rid of these and get them off of our books and not have to be looking at them as 2020 because they're no longer functional. No more money's going to be coming into them. Anybody have any questions or anything else?
Yeah, where are these transferring to?
These are actually going to be going into, for the Summit County Treasurer audit. We have to pay Summit County for collecting the monies and giving it over to us. So right now, we're going to put that in that line item to pay for that service.
So, Mr. Towsley, they're going to stay in the same funds that they were collected in, Fund 108 and 109. When 2012 levy expired, we opened Funds 105 and 106 because the state ORC demands that we have clean funds for clean levy monies. These are just unspent monies that have been collected that have not been totally spent. So rather than lose $29,000, $30,000, I'm asking council's approval to let me budget for these items so that I can still spend that money that we've already collected in those funds.
Okay, where I need clarification is I need to make sure these are still going toward fire.
They are. They're in Fund 108 and 109, which is both fire department.
So where my confusion is, they're going to the Summit County auditor, you said?
They're not going to that. What Ms. Whipke is saying is Summit County, when they send us collection of property taxes and that, they charge us a percentage in that. So it's going to be used to offset those expenses so that we can hopefully use these up before the end of the year.
Okay, so if it's going to offset those expenses, how is it being used for fire? I'm sorry, I'm not
It's the
understanding.
fire
Collect
levy.
the levy
The levy
taxes.
monies were
So the
collected for
expenses
fire.
for that levy?
Yes.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, that helps.
Anyone else? Okay, with no further questions, I would motion to add ordinance 42, 2019 to tonight's agenda with emergency language, and we're looking to waive the second and third readings in order that we can get our books straightened out.
I will second.
Thank you.
There's a motion and a second to move this onto tonight's agenda. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Towsley?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Letter C, ODOT road salt contracts. Mr. Karen's out, so Mr. Pelot, that'll fall to you. Surprise.
It's pretty much just like it said. It's just taking care of the ODOT finances there for the salt. Let's see here.
Mr. Fowler?
So historically, we have used the CUE bid for salt. You all saw the ramifications of that this year, and due to that fact, we have decided that we never want to get stuck in that position again. And while I understand that ODOT has historically been slightly more than the CUE bid, this year they were substantially less. And it's my contention that we go with ODOT because it's safe, and I can guarantee that ODOT is going to get a fixed price for a specific amount of salt. However, I just received that notification last week, and it needs to be passed by the 19th. So I'm asking. Normally, I don't ask for expeditious activity on these, but this just authorizes us to join the consortium and allow them to bid on our behalf.
Robert, do a lot of cities do this?
Outside of the Summit, Stark, Medina, this Portage area, Yes.
Okay.
Most people do subscribe to the ODOT consortium.
And Mr. Fowler, this is simply giving the administration the authority and the ability to sign the contract, correct?
Correct. We have to notify ODOT that we want to be a participant. We cannot participate without council authorizing us to participate in their bidding process.
There's no money involved at this point.
No expenditure of funds.
No
at this
expenditure of funds until the bid comes back, and then we have the option of purchasing up to 80% of what our request would be. And then we can actually purchase, I think, up to 120% over that amount. So if we say we want 1,000 ton of salt, and believe me, we get more than that. But if we say we want 1,000 ton of salt, we can get up to 1,200 ton or as low as 800 ton. So it's been a good program. I've used it in other locations. I just have grown concerned about the way CUE handled our bid last year and would like to have a safer location for us.
That, and it seems like salt has become quite the commodity in the sense that they keep on saying about the shortages and the problems with mining it and everything else. So I would look for those issues to continue. You said
ODOT had plenty of salt all summer or winter, and in fact, we had an arrangement that we didn't publicly discuss. But if we ran into a situation, ODOT was going to trade us salt. We would go get salt and then replenish their bin by whatever we used. So they never had the salt shortage we did. So I want to make sure that doesn't happen to us ever again.
Now, will this replace, in the past, we had to go ahead and put our bid in for salt that we were going to acquire next year?
This replaces that. This will be that. This is us bidding it out for next year. Yes.
All right. Any other questions on this? And you said you need this passed by the 19th, so that means tonight?
If it's possible, yes.
Okay. Any questions? All right, then I will make a motion to add this to tonight's agenda, waiving second and third with emergency.
A second.
Motion second. Any other discussion?
Call the roll.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Letter D, PC Resolution Number R6 2019. Mr. Gaynor.
Yes, ordinance 44, 2019. It's the 1287 mixed-use district ordinance. Have the clerk read it, please.
Not
Well,
yet.
We're discussing it.
Well, now? Okay.
Yeah, I can. So originally, council had introduced an ordinance to recommend an amendment to the codified ordinances creating this mixed-use district, which is really a multi-use district allowing a variety of properties for really intended for large acreage parcels to try to maximize development value of those parcels. This is just creating the classification. Planning Commission has reviewed that and sent it back to council for its further action. So council now is up to bat and can take the recommendation from Planning Commission, which is to look at this language that was submitted and approve that. Once approved, that creates the zoning classification. It doesn't rezone any property. The property itself would have to apply for a rezone at that point.
And is this something that needs to go 3 full readings?
It's not required to go 3
Okay,
readings.
because it's
It
not
can't be
actually
passed as an
rezoning.
because it's a zoning code change, it
Okay.
can't be an emergency,
Okay.
but it doesn't have to go 3 reads.
Okay.
Unlike if you were rezoning a property, I would recommend 3 reads and you're not
Right.
permitted to have an emergency.
Right.
And you're required to have a hearing on that one. This one, no hearing. You can waive readings if you want to. It's just really up to council how they want to proceed on that.
Is there any reason that this can't go for 3 readings? Or 2?
Two would be, would be good.
Okay.
If we could do that,
All
that'd
right.
be great.
So maybe put it on the agenda tonight for a first reading?
If possible, that'd be great, yes.
Any other discussion regarding this?
I thought it already was on the agenda for first reading.
Well, it's We need to make a, we need to
We
make,
need to make a motion to
Provided
add
it
it.
comes out of committee of the whole tonight, it would go on agenda for the first reading.
Okay. Then I'll make that motion to put it on
okay.
the agenda for first reading.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second to add ordinance 44, 2019 tonight, to tonight's agenda. Is there any further discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Letter E, settlement of claims. Ms. Whipke?
Thank you, Mr. President. This is for ordinance number 45, 2019, to be added to tonight's agenda. This legislation is for another settlement between property owners for the Cleveland-Massillon Road widening. It's the court, we have 7 days to react. We've already put part of the deposited $15,505 in the bank in order to go towards this. Now we need to come up to approve paying the other $12,000 and some for a total of $27,825. It would be going to Dayton Nursery. I'd just like to point out to the people that the city is actually only going to be responsible for 10% of this, correct? 10% for properties.
Correct.
And we're going to put out the full amount, but then ODOT will reimburse us the 90%. So it's actually, in end, we'll only be paying $2,782.50. But we need to put this on, add it to the agenda tonight, and we need to waive the second and third readings with emergency language so we can comply with the courts and be moving on with getting our road widened. Anybody?
Yeah, I guess with the Cleveland-Massillon widening do we settle with everybody now?
This is it. That was the last property to be acquired. was
Okay,
this
good.
property.
Great.
So just for reclarification, we have 7 days by court order,
Correct.
so it pretty much has to be done.
Yes, we need to take care of it now.
Thank you.
It just came, basically, we just settled.
Last Wednesday.
Last Wednesday.
Last
Yeah.
Wednesday was the
Yeah.
mediation that led to the settlement.
This time I motion to add ordinance 45, 2019 to tonight's agenda with emergency language and waiving the second and third readings.
I'll second.
Motion and a second to add 45, 2019 to tonight's agenda. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes.
And just a little more clarification on that. That's the Sioux Dayton within the city, not Tom.
Yes.
Correct. All right, letter F, small wireless facilities. Mr. Pelot?
I think we're still just going to hold this over for committee of the whole where we can discuss it more in depth unless administration has something that,
I don't have anything to add. What we need to check on, I talked to Mr. Gaynor before the meeting, and I know he attended or participated in the webinar where this information was submitted. What I need to check is, I know the FCC has made new regulations about small cell, essentially making it very difficult to regulate them. They want to allow the development and deployment of 5G, and small cell allows that. I know Ohio's also done something very similar where they've sort of preempted city authority. This is what Mr. Gaynor was able to get from the webinar he participated in is an ordinance from Maryland. And so what I need to check on, I admit that I haven't done that yet, is whether or not that this would be allowed under Ohio law, and is this the right way to do it? I know Mr. Gaynor also mentioned there may be a deadline under FCC rules to do these regulations. So I will do my best to get an answer pretty quickly. And if it's something we think we need to do, we may be coming back next week. Not that I want to do something that quickly, but there may be an April 15th deadline, which is why I need to double check on. So that's where we're at right now.
And if we would need to, we could always
Have a special.
meeting if
Yeah.
we need to. Okay. Any further discussion or questions? Is there anything else to come before the committee of the whole? We don't have legislation.
right,
Yeah, just so everyone knows that legislation will be coming forward, but we are looking at, we got the information today for the city's insurance. So as soon as we get some information or legislation for that, we'll probably look at that, putting that, next week we'll take care of that. So everybody should have received that. Anything else for Committee of the Whole? All right, moving on to the consideration of prior minutes, the minutes of the regular council meeting of March 25th, 2019. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to those? Those will be accepted as submitted. Reports from officers, boards, and commissions. Mayor Zita.
Thank you. I'll hold off for public service and announcements at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Fowler.
So bear with me. I have quite the extensive list. Probably the most importantly, you'll notice that last Thursday, the Carvo started grinding part of Gardner Boulevard. They actually weren't supposed to start until today. It was kind of a surprise to all of us. But that project is started and has a completion date of next summer, but I'm optimistic that things will start moving quickly. With that, they have asked to close Hawthorne Road at Gardner starting next week. I've told them that they would need to leaflet the neighborhood and make all the residents aware in order to make that happen. We have not formally approved that, but that may be coming forward. So anybody who has contacts on Hawthorne, they'll be getting a letter that I will be approving that will be disseminated to all those residents indicating the road closure, because they have to install sewer line, and that'll last no more than 7 days. So just to kind of give you an update on Cleveland-Massillon Road.
Can I interrupt you real quick?
Yes, sir.
Can I request that be put on the website?
Yes, sir. And I think one thing we should do is put it on the sign, the city sign that we have out front. It's a good way to promote it.
Okay.
Once I won't do that until once I've seen the letter and approved it and said that that's acceptable and that these are the dates. I don't want to do that until that's been solidified. I just wanted to let you all know that that may happen, and if you have contacts there, they may be contacted.
No issues with police, fire.
But we're going to let police and fire.
No,
be aware.
they can go off of Norton Ave. That's the benefit. That that has that second entrance off of there.
Right, I was just concerned. No place to turn around down
Right.
there.
Right.
Yeah.
We know.
Yep. So we just wanted to make you aware of that. Just to let you know, Dan Ellinger retired after 30-plus years in the city. Last Friday was his last day. So we are short one person in streets. We're working through the process of getting promotions and things in order. But just to let you know, he did a great job. He was a valuable employee, but he served our citizens well, and we thank Dan for his service. Those who may not be aware, the House Bill 62, the transportation budget, has passed both the House and Senate. It's been signed by the governor. There are some points of contention, maybe not some of the things we don't like, some things we do. There's some good things in the bill, 10.5-cent increase in the gasoline tax, of which 55% will come to the city. I'm sorry, 45%. It's an increase of 5% from what it was. So that's kind of a significant amount of revenue that we'll see in revenue from the state. And I know that Mr. Markey, the mayor, and I have discussed this amongst the three of us, but there was a provision in the bill that dealt with traffic cameras. Local government funds will see a reduction based on the amount of traffic camera revenue you generate. But just for council's edification, that does not impact us. That was stationary cameras and not ones held by police officers. So I know that there's some points of contention that we're going to lose money, but we have done our research to confirm that those are for stationary cameras only.
But you can't have retroactive legislation, so we didn't run the program in 2019, so we're not in any risk.
And is there any provision in there where the state, the big thing with the lottery when it passed was this money was going to, extra money was going to go to the schools to fund them, and then at some point the state said, oh, hey, by the way, since you're getting these funds from over here, we're going to cut these funds over here. I want to make sure that, or at least I hope there's something in that won't allow them 5 years down the road to say, oh, we're going to cut this.
No,
They can reallocate the funds. They could reallocate percentages. I would say it's likely that they may do that because in 10 years when we go back, because we didn't put an index in it, they may readjust that. The thing they may do is pull back and say we're going to use, you're going to apply for grants, but it can only be used for road and infrastructure projects. So I don't think they could say that we're going to take on another side, but I look at it this way, and I wasn't here, but if you look at our local government funding formula, the amount of money we're going to get in gas tax is about equal to the amount of money we lost in local government funds. And I look at that as this is the state making up for the money they took from us, but it goes to a specific purpose, right? The general government fund that we get from the state can be used on any purpose. This is the state saying, we want you to focus on roads. And I don't know that, but I'm just, I can see how that can be a correlation. To let you know that the mayor and I have been asked to speak on a bill that's before the legislature. It may seem mundane to everyone here, but it's the budget bill. Number one, we see a 9% increase in local government funds in the budget bill. I think it's very kind of the governor. But there's a piece of legislation that's part of the budget that could impact us financially. There's this Marks Radio. There's a fee that is an offset that the state of Ohio has typically paid 50% of that fee. In this budget, it's zeroed out. So we would see an increase on per radio of what we would charge. So we're going to go speak to the legislature and asking them to refund that portion of the bill. So just so you know, we've been very active with our legislature trying to make sure we have positive impact in our community. Last week, we submitted our ReWorks grant application. We're looking at providing cameras and a server for overseeing our recycling area. All that money is paid for. It's a reimbursed grant, but we did submit it because we feel strongly that we've had someone that knocked over the camera, and there's been some activity out there that's not been to our liking. So I wanted to let you know in case you see some requests coming before the Board of Control, et cetera. Once it's approved by the ReWorks, we'll be moving that forward.
Excuse me.
Yes, ma'am.
You're saying that for the ReWorks, this is actually a grant, and even though we put out the money initially, it's totally all reimbursed?
100%.
Thank you.
100%. Doesn't cost the city anything. The only thing we have to do is we have to pay it forward. Pay once it's approved, we pay for it, and then they reimburse us based
Just like
on those.
with the ODOT.
Just yes, ma'am.
It was similar to the last year, the parking
Parking area.
Right,
Yeah,
yeah.
driving.
I just wanted to
Yep.
clarify
Yep.
for the public's sake.
Absolutely.
We pay for it, we get reimbursed,
Mm-hmm.
100%.
The Clark Mill, there's some letters going to be going to Clark Mill residents that will be Barberton's requesting information. If you happen to get a contact from someone on Clark Mill, essentially it's a letter asking them about information for their sewer, for kind of the planning and installation of the sewer line down Clark Mill. They're not obligated to connect, but they're trying to, if people decide they want to connect, that they plan for those connections. The Barberton will be putting out a letter requesting information from the residents. I have told them we have no problem with them contacting the residents to collect that information. If the resident wants to provide it, that's up to the resident. I highly recommend it so that in the future that they can, if they need sewer, they can connect.
Mr. Fowler, they will be installing laterals at each and every property or residence.
That's something we should, we do need to have a discussion. I highly recommend that. It's not been the practice previously. And I've talked to the gentleman that's overseeing the project from CT Consultant, and I think that's the direction the city should go because that helps the homeowner. It goes right up to the property line, and then if the property owner decides ultimately to connect, that's their right or their ability.
As they did in Nash Heights.
Correct.
I mean, I understand they're not required in this instance to hook up, but in the future, I think they would be grateful if that lateral was there, if their septic goes bad and they need to hook up immediately.
You're saving, ultimately what it comes down to is we would be saving the citizen money long term.
That's right.
And I think that's prudent business for us to do for the citizens. But again, it's a change in policy that I just wanted you all to be aware that we're considering, and I think it's the best course of action for the citizens.
Mr. Fowler, I believe with Mr. Gaynor, this is a good policy to be changing. It's not only good for the citizen, it would also be good for the city, so we wouldn't have to be coming back and putting those laterals in later.
I agree
So
with
it's
you wholeheartedly.
good for all the way around. As far as I'm concerned, it ought to be set up that way now on.
I just got to be candid. I've been reluctant to do many changes, right, without having a conversation with each one of you as to what we should be doing, right? And so this is our first instance, and we're going to move forward with that. I'll let CT know that that's our recommendation.
Just while you're on that subject, though, this water line that we're going to be installing also for the 261 South Loop,
Yes.
is that also going to have provisions for the people to hook up if they
want.
to hook up?
Yes. So I'll give you an example. All water lines that we put in, we will run a connection to their property. It is up to the citizen or the property owner to determine whether or not that they want to connect. And
That's
right.
And I think you also said if there's a parcel that doesn't have house, we will not put a connection there.
Correct.
Oh. But I think it's also a good idea, as we talked about the sewers just now, for the water lines also.
Yep.
Also, though, as road work gets done, it'll take anything out of the roadway at a later date, so at least it'll get it to the property line on the street side, on the city street side, so it will help.
Two other items. I apologize. I told you I have a lengthy list. Just so you know, we've worked with the baseball and softball teams to put some money in the fields, try to put some money back in our community. That's part of our parks. Again, we're going to do this master plan. We want to make sure that everyone participates. I'm going to make sure that council participates, also the Parks Board, and the teams that use our fields. But just to let you know, we are communicating with our teams to see what they need, get their recommendations, and try to put something forward for each activity so we can move.
I have one comment on that. Could we be given the information of when and how much was the last time the city did contribute to them?
Sure. I'd be glad to do that. And then lastly, I just wanted to let you know, we went out for bid for the Cleveland-Maslin Road North water and sewer extension from, essentially the water extension from the school to Meaden Place, and the sewer would go from the intersection of Cleveland, Maslin, and Wadsworth Road north to Meaden Place. That's out for bid. It'll be back at the end of the month. We hope to have some things to council before then, just to kind of discuss what they're, but the bids are due back the 29th of April, which I believe is a Monday. Thank you.
Thank you.
And while you're on updates, the bridge on Cleveland-Maslin. It's 2020 that Kenmore Construction has till, or 20?
No, August of this year. It'll be
August
done
of
this year.
Hopefully, it'll be done before August, but August is the deadline.
I thought,
They're working on it. No, they've been last couple weeks, last
Yeah,
week or so.
that's
week
kind
and
of
a half,
what
they've been out there. So
sparked the questions from residents, so.
This August.
Yeah, we took a series of pictures and actually seen people moving.
All right. Mr. Messner, any reports?
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Mr. Markey?
Mercifully, no.
All right. We have no public hearings, so under introduction of new legislation, Ordinance 42, 2019, Ms. Whipke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I introduce ordinance 42, 2019 for its first reading. Ask clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance to amend the appropriations for the current expenses of the City of Norton for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2019, authorizing transfers from the general fund for calendar year 2019 and declaring an emergency.
This is the ordinance that I gave the long orientation to when we first came in under Committee of the Whole. Unless somebody has any questions, I'm just going to go move forward. Okay. At this time, I motion to waive the second and third readings on ordinance 42, 2019.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to waive the second and third readings of Ordinance 42, 2019. Is there any further discussion regarding waiver?
Yes, Mr. President.
Mr. Tousley?
In the original memo, it says this needs to be done in April. I guess my question or comment is, does this need to be done tonight? And I just got my Exhibit A tonight. There's no way I'm going to support pushing this forward tonight myself.
You good?
As long as we get it done before the end of the month, so I can make the journal before we close off April, I'm okay.
Maybe we can withdraw the motion and second and go on
So
the
that
reading.
we probably would have one reading tonight, maybe a
Yes.
second reading, and then pass.
Yeah.
I don't think we can get a third reading in, though.
But I appreciate anything you can do.
So give it its first tonight, second on the 22nd,
So,
and waive the
Okay,
third.
I make a motion to withdraw my first motion for waiving the readings
I don't
tonight.
think you need a motion, just withdraw
So
it.
you're just withdrawing
I'll
your-
withdraw
Yeah.
my second.
all right, all right.
I withdraw, okay.
First reading only then tonight. Ordinance number 43, 2019. Mr. Pelot?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to offer ordinance 43, 2019 for its first reading. Ask clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance authorizing participation in the ODOT road salt contracts awarded in 2019 and declaring an emergency.
And this is the one that you said you needed done by the 16th, so necessary to waive the second and third reading. This is authorizing administration to enter into an agreement with ODOT for salt that we discussed at the beginning of the meeting. No one has any questions? Then I'll move to waive the second and third readings on ordinance 43, 2019.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to waive the second and third readings on ordinance 43, 2019. Is there any further discussion regarding waiver? Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Towsley?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes.
And at this time, I will move to adopt ordinance 43, 2019.
I'll second.
A motion and a second to adopt ordinance 43, 2019. Is there any further discussion? Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Towsley?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Ordinance number 44, 2019. Mr. Gaynor?
Yes, I'll offer 44, 2019 for its first reading. Ask the clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance to amend the zoning code of the city by adding chapter 1287.
And that's for first reading only tonight. Yes. Ordinance number 45, 2019. Ms. Whipke?
Thank you, Mr. President. I introduce ordinance 45, 2019 for its first reading. Ask clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance authorizing a settlement of claims on behalf of the city in Summit County Court of Common Pleas, probate division case number 2019-CV-0105, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. This is the ordinance we discussed. It's for the widening of Cleveland-Maslin, and we are under a court order, so we need to get this done tonight. At this time, I motion to waive the second and third readings on ordinance 45, 2019.
I'll second.
A motion and a second to waive the second and third readings on ordinance number 45, 2019. Is there any discussion regarding waiver? Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Towsley?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes.
Thank you. At this time, I motion to adopt ordinance 45, 2019.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second for adoption. Is there any further discussion? Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Towsley?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Ordinance 38, 2019. Ms. Whipke?
I offer ordinance 38, 2019 for its third reading. Ask clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance authorizing the purchase of a 2019 Dodge Durango for the police department at a cost not to exceed $21,379 and declaring an emergency.
I motion to adopt ordinance 38, 2019.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second to adopt ordinance number 38, 2019. Is there any further discussion?
Just to remind people, these are both this ordinance and the next is replacing very old, aging vehicles in the service department,
Police.
or police, excuse me.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I just want to point out that the reason there's two different prices is because of trade-in values, different trade-in values.
Thank you. Any further discussions or comments? Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Towsley?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Ordinance number 39, 2019. Ms. Whipke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer ordinance 39, 2019 for its third reading. Ask clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance authorizing the purchase of a 2019 Dodge Durango for the police department at a cost not to exceed $25,879 and declaring an emergency.
I motion to adopt ordinance 39, 2019.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance number 39, 2019. Is there any further discussion? Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Public service announcements. Mayor Zita?
Thank you. I have one, and I would like to announce that the Community Cleanup Day is scheduled for April 27th. It's from 8:30 a.m. until 1 o'clock. We'll start off the morning at the community center. There's a light breakfast as well as lunch will be provided. You can pre-register and receive a free water bottle. I'm also asking, though, that if you have any community service hours, should you need to have community service hours for graduation or for any civic clubs that you belong to please consider coming out and helping out at that event. So once again, it's on the 27th of April.
Thank you, Mayor. Are
Thank
there
you.
any further public service announcements, Mr. Fowler?
He left out one item, but that's okay. Home Depot will be having an assembly for children under 12. I'm sorry, 12. They'll be assembling an activity at the community center. We're encouraging people to come out and participate. Please register at the front desk. Let us know you're coming so we can make sure we have enough for everyone who wants to attend. And that's free for anyone 12 and under.
And that's the 27th as well?
Yes, in the morning.
During the cleanup
During the
time.
cleanup day, yes.
Great. Thank you.
You said register at the front desk. Can you do it on the website as well? You know.
No, we just want people to call in to Vivian, and she's got a list, and she's going to keep
Okay.
track of everybody
Thank
that
you.
does. Yep.
I come up to the.
Also, this Saturday at 11 o'clock, the Norton Women's Club is sponsoring its yearly Easter egg hunt. So all the children who want to go, there'll be prizes, and ages from 0 up through 4th grade are welcome to participate.
And that's here in Columbia Woods Park again?
Yes.
And what time does that start?
11 o'clock.
11 o'clock? Thank
Yes.
you. Any further public service announcements? All right, at this time, council will be recessing into executive session to consider the purchase, transfer, or sale of property for public purposes as defined in Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G2 and Section 3.122 of the Norton City Charter, and employment matters as defined in ORC Section 121.22G1 and Section 3.121 of the Norton City Charter. In conferences with an attorney for the city concerning disputes involving the city that are the subject of pending or imminent court action as defined in Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22, G3, and Section 3.123 of the Norton City Charter, and to consider confidential information related to economic development assistance as defined in Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22, G8. I now move that council move into executive session.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to recess to executive session. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes?
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Tousley?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
I will note that while council is in executive session, the audio and video is recording live and uninterrupted. If you do not want your conversations recorded, you may want to exit the council chambers. When council returns, we will not be taking any further legislative action tonight. I would invite Mayor Zita, Mr. Fowler, Mr. Messner, and Mr. Markey to join us. We are in recess.
That's what I say.
the actual one that I'm in.
Well, that's a main thing. I mean, you don't get any others.
Yeah, well, I paid my taxes, I gotta pay dock fees too. But it's a little dark. There's like 6 or 7 of us around the edge, you know?
Can you put a vote on it?
Most of the people, well, I just bought it last September, but most of the people had, well, there was actually a vote on my dock for the first part of the year. And then the other ones have pontoons. So, yeah.
What was, I looked at a couple houses out there because I, just
Mhm.
looking for stuff on the lake out there. And there was a ranch, I can't remember the street, I know it was a ranch. Went down, I think it had, I thought it had been covered. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm on Tweed, and the house sits about 2/10 of a mile away from the lake. I'll give them a call and see if I have.
That's good that you have, like privileges.
It is.
That really is,
Yeah.
that would actually be more valuable than having to do it on the lake.
Yeah.
People, use the lake, not really,
Yeah.
have it.
And I don't mind the walk, that's for sure. I've got dogs that walk around there all the time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think I'm gonna like it. I just, like I said,
Now, do you have the stores out there?
we do not in a septic.
Well,
And well, I didn't want them.
Oh, yeah.
I've got city sewer in Kent. My other house is in Kent. And a well, and I prefer just to. I got that.
It's like, 40 Point, you know where that's at.
Kind of.
It's off of, you know where Pop Towers.
Yes, 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 yes.
Coming up with Pop Tower, 1/4 family
did on Warwood happen, you know what I mean?
So soon?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
You know how he said if he became president, he would stop the war?
Yeah. He had no intention.
How you doing, Carrie?
Good.
I sold 4 houses. I'm getting listings like crazy. It's been
Stop.
great.
I finally got it on
Everyone
Zillow.
wants to sell their house in May.
Yes,
I'm just like,
yes. Hopefully,
yeah.
fingers crossed for us. Gotta get rid of.
Oh, any hits?
You know, I told you, we had 32 showings over the winter. 32, not one offer.
No kidding.
I didn't stay with the realtor.
That's crazy.
32.
32. Wow.
We had 6 the first day and sold it.
Stop it.
That's a lot of people right now. A lot.
Norton goes like this.
Yeah.
I couldn't
Oh,
get
yeah.
anything.
Exactly.
Carla, you know, every time we'd go, oh,
And I'm
an
noticing
offer.
Nash Heights too, a lot are selling quick over there
Yes.
too.
Yes.
I've noticed. Not last.
We don't need them, just go ahead.
Thank you, I appreciate that, Mr. Gaynor. Did good. I didn't know. That's the key, don't let them talk.
Just the brief. Just the brief.
Motion to adjourn.
I call the city council meeting back to order. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.
You know, I wanted Swenson